Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with Blue Bear Flutes and our website bluebearflutes.com. The only name in Native American flutes you need to remember, especially during this video, because I have so many people say, "Can I buy your flutes?" And I'm like, yes, go to bluebearflutes.com. Anyway, all joking aside, today is a video I've been waiting to do for a long time and have really hoped to share something with you both from my childhood as well as, kind of modern times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a drone flute and show you how technically you could make a drone flute, although I'm not suggesting you do so. Anyway, how you can make a drone flute and really, make something spectacular for a little money, and that's what I'm doing today. So one of my last videos I made like this was making a teak flute, I think it was, for under $7, and I used a couple of tools in it, and they're like, "You didn't have $7 tied up in that flute, you have $100 worth of tools." And I'm like, no, I have over $1 million worth of tools, but it's my skills that made this flute here for $7. So anyway, so all joking aside, what I did was I found a beautiful piece of rosewood. This is a type of rosewood called shisham. If I'm not pronouncing that right, please somebody correct me. But anyway, I thought this was a beautiful piece of rosewood, and I thought, this would make one heck of a drone flute. So I've never worked with rosewood before. I have no intentions of probably working with it ever again. But for this particular case, I spent $30 on this cutting board from my local Walmart store. It's a brand that you can find there. I might even put the QR code or UPC code on here for you to check it out yourself if you want to go buy one from them or wherever. There's so many other beautiful woods like this just laying around in different places. I've got them from pallets. I've got it from pieces of wood that have, that are sandwiched in between other pieces of wood that I've gotten. I've gotten some beautiful wood out of shipping containers that, people put it in for storage or what have you. I found mahogany and some amazing oak and maple and some types of what I thought were pine that I don't know if they're pine or not, but they look really beautiful. I've actually gotten some teak that way too, so FYI. But anyway, this piece of shisham is really amazing looking. I mean, you're not even seeing the pretty part of it, I think. Let me go ahead and rip this thing off. That way you can see some of it is just really something else. It's going to make one heck of a drone flute. Like I said, $30. And the tools that I'm going to use today, that I'm going to show you how to use yourself, in case theoretically you ever wanted to imagine doing this, trying to make sure that I don't tell people I'm making this rosewood flute for $30, because if I do, then you'll be screaming at me in the comments, "You didn't make it for $30. You used a myriad of tools." So I'm going to tell you every tool that I'm going to use in this video. First off, I have a cordless Dremel. The battery's currently charging. The cordless Dremel has a 3/8 sander drum on the end of it, which is what I grew up using to make flutes, which is kind of difficult, but still, I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to use a pencil, and I've got a ruler up here I may or may not use. Let's see here. I've got a caliper up here, but I'm not going to use it. Here is a handsaw. That'll come in real handy for cutting this board up. And a mask. Yes, I'm going to use a mask. I hope I include all these in the description of this video, because I know that you all want to know that I'm going to use a mask for this video. I'm not trying to be sarcastic. But anyway, so I'm going to show you how to do this. And like I said, this is how I grew up making Native American flutes, and not with rosewood, mind you, and not with cutting boards necessarily, although you can find other cutting board videos of mine, because cutting boards come in just a wide variety of materials. This one I consider to be kind of lucky in finding it, but there's a lot of other cutting board materials. So the first thing we've got to do is cut it up. And I know that a lot of you are so worried about the measurements and what have you. That's the ones of you who aren't worried about me talking too much. If y'all have already muted the video, then I'm going to share the measurements with everybody who's interested. So I'm going to cut this into strips that are about 2 1/4 inches wide. I need 2 of those strips so I can sandwich them together and make a drone out of it. 2 1/4 inches wide is actually wider than the high B backpack drones that we offer on my website, made out of poplar. but this is going to be a high B backpack drone, and I'm making it 2.5 inches wide, so I give myself some room for error. You know, once again, doing this by hand is going to require that I am a little bit more articulate than when I use those couple of $100 machines that I have. Anyway, so the first thing, like I say, we're going to cut this up. You can use whatever, theoretically, that you have to cut this kind of material up. Like I say, a handsaw will do it justice. If you don't have, you know, a $5,000 table saw laying in front of you somewhere, or even a $50 yard sale special table saw. Of course, those might bog down on Rosewood, and any of them would certainly possibly chop your digits off. So make sure that we're only doing this theoretically rather than actually for real. So the first thing I'm going to do is chop this up into 2 strips, and then we'll get to the long, enduring, tedious, you know, dremeling out the inside of the drone. Okay, so rather than boring you with the long, detailed process of doing this right here for, say, an hour and a half, I went ahead and skipped ahead, and I wanted to show you what I've done now. I've got these 2 beautiful pieces of wood. This is one side of the drone, and this is going to be the other side of the drone. Just amazing looking. I mean, it's just really some kind of unbelievable. This I've decided is going to be my fingering side because, of course, it's the prettiest. So splay it over like this. I've got some lines that I've drawn. I'll tell you what they're for. This area up here is where the sound, the air supply chamber is going to be, which you guys call a slow air chamber. And I say you guys because, you know, it's just a air chamber to me. Anyway, that's where this is going to go. It's about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch away from the top of the flute here where the mouthpiece is going to be. That gives me enough room to kind of round in a little bit and not dip into the air chamber itself. So about 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch here will be good. And then I'm about the same 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch from the inside to this first line, and then the next line, and then the same here and here. And the reason those lines are there to give me some guidance on how I'm going to be dremeling the channels in for the flute itself. And so I've got to make sure that I adhere to certain start and stop points. I will need to draw one more set of lines here to ensure that I have a good area for my track, but you'll see that in just a moment. Like I say, I just want to make sure that I've got some idea of where I'm working here to make sure I've got enough room to do all this once again by hand. So we're not going to Dremel beyond this point this way or this point, but we will this area here, and then there will be like a little area that we'll skip over, and then we'll make the rest of it. But anyway, that's the long, tiring, boring process, which will be mostly sped up. You guys watching me just Dremel away here with a mask on. And by the way, when I drew these lines, I may have used this ruler, so FYI. But I did not use a caliper. I didn't. Those were all guesswork. I didn't calibrate. So this is just for demonstration purposes only. Fling. Anyway, so that's what we're about to do. And those of you who use the metric system or what have you, you can use an online calculator like I would to determine how far 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch is if you want to go that route, or you can just kind of use 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch. I will be giving some measurements only in millimeters, so any of you who are stuck on the standard system and can't calculate there, you might want to use an online calculator for that. There's so easy methods by multiplying, 1 inch by 25, and that's your millimeters. But for those of you who are stuck on one or the other, instead of using both like I do, c'est la vie. Anyway, so here we go, dremeling away. Okay, so as you can see, we went through a good handful of sanding drums. Let me get those off out of the way. I was able to stop at my local hardware store and I found a Dremel packet that included a couple of things I needed. A little drill bit, actually the tool I'm going to use to make my track with, come with several sanding drums, and most importantly, it came with this other sanding drum attachment. This one is nearly impossible to find these days from Dremel. That's the reason I've bought them from Harbor Freight for a while, and I would love to show you the difference between the one from the Harbor Freight kit and this one, which are nearly identical, except for this one the shaft is made out of a carbon steel compared to the chromed steel that was imported for Harbor Freight. Not really a big deal there. The washers are a little bit higher grade, not really a big deal there, but this rubber piece here is a whole different world compared to the ones from Harbor Freight, which are very soft, and this one is very hard. So there's a difference, but there is something that I got very useful out of the other kit. There, you can't see it, but I've actually got double washers on this thing, and the reason I've done that is because the engineers 100 years ago that designed this didn't compensate for the expansion of this sanding band, and so with the standard washers that come on it, it'll eventually start slipping. So I put another washer on the bottom and another on the top, and it allows me to tighten it down, thereby squeezing that little rubber piece together a little tighter, expanding it out more, and eventually what happens is it blows out instead of slipping, which slipping won't do you any good. And this one I can still actually go back and reuse. You see how it's tapered right here. I can actually go back and slide the sanding drum into it from this side and put it on backwards, and I'll still have that angle there for cutting with this particular purpose. Although, you can see I've done a lot of dremeling here. Anyway, the next thing we're going to do is mark the holes and drill them out for this wonderful drone I'm so excited to have, and I think we decided this is going to be where the fingerings are right here, and this is going to be the back. Beautiful, beautiful drone. I've got a pattern here that I'm going to use, and I'm going to give you the measurements in just a moment. I guess first off, you should know that the sanding drums here, I believe they're rated at 3/4. They're really technically 5/8 of an inch in diameter, which is how big this track is here. When I put it together, it looks pretty round. The end may be the least round, but the rest of it looks pretty good. I looked at it inside, and it's a matter of making sure that it's glued together nice and straight. And there again, that's a beautiful color there on this piece of rosewood. So let's see here. With my high B pattern, which is made for a 5/8 inch inside diameter channel. There we go. I believe this piece of wood is long enough to create a high B. If it's not, I've got two options. I could either round it up and just deal with it, or I could put a restriction in the bottom and make sure that it's a B. But otherwise, you can see where I mark these holes here. That's where the fingerings are going to go. I'm going to give you the measurements for those, and then I'm going to go ahead and mark some holes up here too, just to show you where they're going. Honestly, I don't need those myself, but I thought it might be of some help. And let's see which ruler we got today. So, starting at the very edge, you can see right at the edge of this sound chamber, I put the hole right next to the wall. It looks like, using a standard measurement, we're at 4 1/4 for this first fingering, about 5 1/8 on this next one. Honestly, you could put it at 5 inches. It's just going to make the holes a little closer together. The next one is 6 1/4, then 7 1/8, and let's call this last one halfway between 7 7/8 and 8. Let's just go there. Any of you that can do the math in your head really quick and feel like it's going to help you to blurt it out, please go ahead and post in the comments what halfway between 7 and an eighth and 8 is. It's not that I don't know, but I wanted to give you a chance to speak your mind. We could go on the measurements over here on the millimeters if you like, just to be on the safe side. Like I say, 5/8. I'll let you figure out what size metric that is. But on the millimeters, the measurements go roughly 108 millimeters to the first fingering. The next fingering is roughly 128 or 29 millimeters. Then the next one is 159, then roughly 180, and then we're looking at around 202 millimeters on that last fingering. And then the full length, just to give you an idea of the sound chamber here, looks like roughly 12 3/4. Otherwise, let's see, I think we're looking at 2,000, oh my goodness, in a bunch. No, it's 3,000 and 3,200 and say 50, give or take. I think that's close to right. So 3,250, excuse me, 300, I'm so sorry. 3,000 would be a long flute. 325, let's say that, millimeters. Roughly how long that is. You may wind up having to cut some off, and we might have to add some on. So let's see how that works out. But the next thing I'm going to do, I got to grab a tool I should have got already to put this lovely new drill bit that's made to fit my Dremel. I will tell you, in a shop scenario where you're using these things on a regular basis, this little tool here seems like such a waste. This is the tool that comes with it. One end of it has a screwdriver for loosening this, and the other end is for taking loosening the collet on the power head here. I have like 100 of these laying around in different places. Some of them I've actually sharpened the screwdriver bit. But you think that it's really unnecessary, and you start using pliers to take this on and off with, and I'm going to tell you, eventually pliers are going to tear that thing up. Of course, we have countless other wrenches and tools here in the shop. Now, one thing I want to share with you is safety. So I've been wearing my goggles the entire time I've been doing this, because Dremels will throw some stuff at your face. But there's something about a Dremel that you need to know, or rotary tool, whatever you feel comfortable calling it. Something you need to know. Anytime you have a bit on the end of here, especially one that has a spiral, these little guys here, well, if I can get them out, I have to use that tool for what it's made for. There we go. This guy, not so much, because it's smaller and because it's really only going to do so much damage. It may walk on you when you're trying to apply some pressure, but drill bits do in a way that you don't want to see. And I've used another tool that's not a drill bit, that's made for cutting out tiles and wood and a number of things. And I've used that tool without the guard that actually comes with it when you buy it. And two of the times that I've done that, it took my entire thumbnails off of both fingers. So if I can make a recommendation, please be careful. I am not recommending you use this Dremel tool for anything, and especially other than what the company wants to lay claim to liability there for. But this is what we're going to do today, because I wanted to kind of keep it within the family of what it is that I'm using here to make this flute. And so I'm going to drill my fingerings out with this, just to show you that that's an option. Not necessarily recommending this is what you do. Let's see. They make a drill press for this Dremel tool, by the way. I'm going to do it one-handed and see how we work out. Well, today for me, one-handed seems to be working out. I haven't lost my thumbnail yet. Well, there's some fingerings and a sound hole. And now for the part that I wanted to share with you that I hope will help you understand why I don't normally do this with a Dremel. Let's see what these fingerings look like. Wow. Tell you what, 50 years does make you drill a nice straight line. That is impressive. I can't promise, first timers are going to turn out like this. When you have a tool in your hand and it's not steadied by, like a drill press is steadied by mechanism, oftentimes you wind up drilling at an angle. And so in my youth, I can tell you that these guys would have been over here and over there and over here and over there. And one would be down here and another one would be right beside it. And just that's how it's going to happen. So, of course, thereby wasting a beautiful piece of wood here. But it looks like I'm pretty well straight in a line. There's this one right here that I'm out of alignment. The others are all as close to perfect as I think is humanly possible. If this one here was slid over just about 3 millimeters, it would look great. But otherwise, my next step is going to be gluing this dude together. And I can do that here really quick if you want to watch me. But to be honest with you, gluing a flute together is kind of like the easiest part. So you don't have to watch this if you don't want to. But after that, then we've got work ahead of us, because currently for a drone, this dude here is like mega thick right up here, and I'm going to have to get it down a lot thinner. If you're working with just a Dremel, it's going to take you a minute, and a lot of this back and forth with more sanding drums. I may do something else to speed things up a little bit, but the fact of the matter is you can do it with the sanding drum. You can't. I mean, I've shaped flutes with that all day long. One of my favorite tools, and I don't know any of you have been here with me long enough to know, one of my favorite tools I had was as a kid, that is, was a washing machine motor that my dad had scrapped out of an old washing machine, and we hooked a extension cord to it, and it ran. And as a matter of fact, I never even hooked like a wiring plug on the end of it or wired it into anything. Didn't put a switch on it. It just had two prongs, and I would stick them in the extension cord. I mean, you guys in Mumbai, eat your heart out. But anyway, or Brazil. Oh my God, so many people around the world do those kind of things, myself included. Okay, but anyway, my dad had bought this attachment. I don't know where he got it from, or maybe he scavenged it out of something else, but it fit the shaft of the washing machine motor, and it had a bolt that you could tighten down, and it would clamp that shaft on the washing machine motor. On the head of it, there was like a bolt, and so you could put a bolt in there. And what I did, you see this tiny little disc, they make a tool for this tiny little disc, which is like the small version of what it is I'm talking about. So imagine this large version coming out of a washing machine motor, and I would bolt this little sanding disc on the end of it, and it would just sit there and run. And it's comical and sad, but at the same time, that's my humble beginnings. I mean, Dremel was a luxury back in those days. You still haven't seen the video where I've carved a flute out by hand yet, because we've been editing this thing, and it's painful to watch. I mean, it really is so much time. Gosh, it was 2 hours worth of... And I'm going to remake that one too, actually. We've got plans to remake it a little differently, but that one is going to be a good video for you. But anyway, one thing that I did with my sanding disc, which is very floppy here, as you can tell, is I would put a backing on it, something harder, like either piece of wood, or which is not a good idea, by the way, or a harder fixture anyway, and it would cause my sanding disc to be a lot stronger. And once again, we're talking about something 150 times this size, right? So I would take that homemade tool and I would take my flute and I would turn it like this on one edge of that sanding disc, the edge that won't spit it back at you, because one edge is going this way and the other edge is going that way. You want it to go that way. So anyway, I would turn it like this and I would get it to shape how I needed it, and it would take some time, it really would, but that was, you know, ingenuity at its finest. And I fortunately didn't have to climb the power line to hook the electrical cord up like I seen in one of my favorite movies from India. Let's see, what was that one? It's called Outsourced, I think. I didn't have to climb the power line to hook up the electrical that way, that time. But anyway, so let me grab some glue and some clamps, and I'll let you watch me do this probably in fast motion or something, so that you don't have to be bored out of your mind watching somebody glue something, watching glue dry. Okay, so got it unclamped as you've seen, and I know that it's probably looks like a block of wood to most of you. To me, I can see kind of what's going to happen already, and I'm very, very pleased with how it's turning out. I do wish this was the top of the drone already, and the way that I could have done that if I wasn't demonstrating it in the shop here and how you can do this with a Dremel is I could have laid this over on the other side and planed the inside of it down to almost the thickness of what it is that I wanted it. But instead of doing that, I just decided to throw caution to the wind, and we're going to see what it looks like after I get this surface down a little bit. So like I say, right now we've got two nice air channel or flute channel areas inside of it, and we're going to have to get this smaller so that it's about this thick, and get these glue marks off the side and then round it off on the belt sander. All of which you could do with the Dremel with that little sanding tool, or you could do with a belt sander on surfacing this, which I'm going to show you that portion of it. But you know, there's so many different ways to do this. You never really set in stone one exact thing that you have to do, and the whole purpose of this video is just to show you some of my humble beginnings using that Dremel as a way to make the inside of the flute body. So let's take this over to the belt sander and get started on that. Okay, so as you can imagine, that was a lot of sanding. Anyway, to get it down to the desired thickness and shape and rounding the edges, I started rounding the edges right off because this hardwood was so sharp it was cutting my hand to hold it. So I'm like, you know. Anyway, looks pretty good, and I went ahead and dribbled the inside just a little bit so they matched up a little better. The next step is, of course, making the track area and the sound holes, which, if you haven't seen me do that before, I have so many individual videos on that. I'm going to use this little tool here to start with and get it going the way I need it. And then I'll probably use my burning tools because it's just the most convenient thing in the world. Those burning tools, of course, we do offer on our website for sale. I've also got videos on how to make them if you want to make your own. If it's not convenient for you, then of course there's the ones we have. Something I did do earlier was I went ahead and filled this crack in as it developed. You notice originally there was kind of a peninsula over here. Now it's two islands. But I filled this in with some dark wood and some super glue, and apparently it wasn't deep enough, so I've got to go back in and fill it in again. Now, something I should have mentioned earlier too, other than sanding, if you didn't have like a planer or whatever tool to take this down with, something you can do is you can use a hand planer. A hand planer is a couple of bucks, honestly. I think Harbor Freight still carries them. I think they've got one at this point in time for, say, under $20. I'm sure you can find a ring planer, which is like a real simple little dude. There's so many ways to do that, and of course, logically, nobody in their right mind would take on this task out of some hardwood as hard as this stuff here is. So that's not me admitting to being out of my right mind, but it is a point that I'd like to make. If you don't have a gob of tools on hand, don't make it out of some crazy, just hard wood. That's a bad idea. Historically, there again, not something that would have happened anyway. Typically, drones were made out of clay, just to FYI. But even the wooden flutes that were made historically in the Americas, specifically the United States portion of North America, the flutes that we made out of wood were out of small trees, typically, or river cane. So not something that that we would have had, you know, the need for any kind of fancy tools to use. But this rosewood here is hard as a rock. But anyway, I'm going to get started doing on this, and then the next thing, like I say, I'll be burning the track in there. But I did want to show you this little tool here is the one that I used to use, you know, forever and a day. And we actually had gotten to a point we got a larger one that was the same width, but it was a little bit larger in diameter, which was pretty ideal for making the track area. But it did require that I keep a good eye on it. Of course, my eyes are not as good as they used to be, so that's why we use a CNC machine or milling machine today to do that. But let's get started here. There is going to be a lot of cleanup there to do, and of course my burning tools will take care of most of that. Probably a little bit of sandpaper to get it started, because as you can see it did skip a little bit, but that's once again the hardness of the wood. Using that larger Dremel bit here would certainly make a big difference, but still suffering with how hard the wood is to cause it to skip like that. So next we'll go over to the burning tools. So that's a lot of sanding, and I'm pretty happy with how it looks so far. The thickness is about what I want it to be. So if you were starting off with any other kind of wood, something that was about yay thick or what have you, it would be very easy to do this without struggling so much. But I wanted to use this piece of rosewood because I thought it looked cool, and so that's what I did. I did Dremel a lot of it, I have to admit. I've Dremeled some other things that I'll show you in just a moment here. But right now, what I'm doing is using this 3/16 of an inch rod. To enlarge these holes. There we go. Just a wee bit. I think this is going to be beautiful once it's oiled. Maybe an amazing looking little flute. So I've got the track areas formed here, and what I'm going to do is something that I do with everything, and that's use this burning tool. I've got videos on how to make these burning tools. They're not really super expensive to recreate. I will tell you that the one I sell on my website is the in-between that size and the other size that I use for everything, meaning that I could use it to make this flute with, or I could use it to make the flutes I use my other burning tool for. But in this particular case, I'm going to use the smaller one since I have it here on hand. Although it's torched, looks like it's freaking out a little bit. Should probably blow that thing out. I'm going to put a finger hole in the back. This one matches the hole in the front right there. And this is what I'm going to clean my mouthpiece up with. One thing I didn't show you is me taking that little drill bit and drilling the mouthpiece out. So I do this at something of an angle so that it goes only in this hole over here. You don't want to drill this that way because then it'll go over here and then the two of them will cross, and it's kind of like there's no way to play one side. But this is going to this side over here, and this is going to this side over here. And as soon as I burn the mouthpiece in there, it'll have a lot better airflow. Something that I discuss in a lot of my videos is that burnt wood does not absorb moisture. Okay. I may have to move a different torch over here. Let's see, because this guy here is just not acting right. This one, a little bit better. We used to go through torch heads like crazy until I eventually started taking them apart and cleaning them. And then I found the torch head that I really like. This one here that's got a little push button to start it if you use that, if it continues to work, that is. But the thing I like about it most is that little triangle, three-way flame that comes off of it. The problem is the propane that we use is not always necessarily clean. And this dirty propane that we refill these tanks with causes some gum to build up inside of the body of the torch head. And when that happens, it slows down the airflow and the propane flow. And let's just say most people would probably throw it out. And if we hadn't gone through so many of them that way, I would, of course, too. But I found that carburetor cleaner does a good job of cleaning that. Unfortunately, it causes the buttons no longer to be functional. But as long as the torch is working, we're happy. What I'm doing there is squaring the holes up a little bit so that they're a little more uniform. There we go. So a little forewarning, if you're using a porous material, some porous materials like poplar and even pine, sometimes they will have so many pores in it, in the inside of the wood, it won't allow it to make a good quality sound without sealing it. So these days we usually use some super glue to seal the inside of it. One thing I like to do is seal the underside of the sound edge there just a little bit, since it gets so moist and everything right there all the time. And it helps to ensure that that part of the flute's nice and hard. The super glue will soak into it, and its little acrylates like to wiggle their ways into just about anything. And once you heat it, which I am not recommending heating super glue, but we do it in the shop here all the time. Once you heat it, it really hardens fast. I mean, just really like crazy fast. Let's see if that did anything to the sound. You never know. It sounds like the bottom note is a perfect B. The other notes are a little bit off. Let's see. It's actually a flat B flat. Boy, my hearing is bad today. Of course it is a little chilly, but not super chilly. Both sides seem to be in tune. So the sound of the individual notes will be more clear if I cut it to a B size that I had originally intended it to be. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Now once again, you could use a Dremel to cut that off, sand that off, Dremel it off. In my youth, I would have done any of that and been very happy with it, because as a teenager, I was frightened to death of bandsaws. I had seen my father almost cut his fingers off several times. I had been cut working on his bandsaw one time. I mean, I was always the electrician in the house, even as a teenager. But anyways, I think I may cut it off. So if anybody ever asks you, if you become a world famous flute maker, and they ask you what's the difference between a B flat and a B, you can tell them that much. That's the difference between a B and a B flat. But let's see what our notes are looking like. The first one all covered B. Not bad. That one's a little flat, so I'm going to burn the hole out just a pinch. And preemptively, since my rod is hot, and I know that each hole above it's going to be a little flat as well. Let's see what way. Okay, top two notes are a little flat. I've still got this one in the back to contend with, which I know it's going to be flat. I'm not even going to try it until I burn it out a little bit. And I'm going to go back in here and make sure it's cleared out. Okay. Okay, so it's a little airy sounding. We're going to fix that up with no problem. And then the top 2 holes I just need to make a smidgen bigger. You can imagine, having used a Dremel early on in my flute making, that discovering these burning tools, or discovering the use of fire, I should say, like the caveman, I found that that was a lot easier way to make these holes than it was with the Dremel. So I still need to make this one hole just a smidgen bigger. As it usually needs to be. And yeah, not too shabby. Let's see what these 2 notes, the bottom fingering and this first fingering, sound like together. The first hole is a little bit flat. A lot of times when you're using a burning tool, of course it makes the holes larger at a certain speed, and it's convenient for that, but it also heats the hole up, and the hot fingering, not only is it hot for your finger, but it also makes the sound a little bit sharp. So we let it cool off and go back and check it and do it again. So each hole is good except for this second from the top. Needs to be just a little bit bigger. I think that's got it. Looks good inside. That's important. See how I slid my finger over that hole, checking it for the hole in the back to see if they're in tune. And since they weren't, covering this hole up makes it go in tune, which means the hole in the back is flat. I'm sure that's got it. They're so close to one another. I'm just going to hit this one just a smidgen. It sounds good. It has kind of a small tone compared to the drones that we normally make, but I'm not complaining. It's likely the wood. And after I oil it, it'll probably improve the sound 200 or 300 times. My next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this flute block and this killer whale that I cut out, and I believe I have this one. I was telling my wife, I think I have this one on the website, maybe on the info page, might be on the flute making page, I can't remember. But I have this one in a printout. It's just a silhouette of it, and you can cut it out using whatever tools you've got. Like I say, you can cut it out with an X-Acto knife if you are willing to spend that time. But I'm going to put it on top of this guy right here. I might burn it a little bit because I like my killer whales a little darker. I can't remember where the light spots are on the killer whale right now as I'm thinking about it, which is laughable, but I'm going to darken it up a little bit, and it's going to be on here. I'll oil it, tie it on, and you'll get to see the finished product. But like I say, this entire project, you've seen me start to finish, do a lot of it with the Dremel. The parts of it that I didn't do with the Dremel could have been done with the Dremel. I mean, if I had all day to do this and it wasn't like 5:30 on one of my regular 7-day work days, and we didn't have hundreds of flutes that we needed to get out today or something of that nature, then I would have done, with the Dremel. But once again, with various tools that you have at your disposal, you can do all kinds of things. But you can do them with simple tools just as well. So I'm going to take care of this whale and get this guy oiled and play it for you one last time, and I think you'll be very impressed, as I hope to be myself. Okay, so the way it turned out looking is unbelievable. I've never used rosewood for anything before other than some imported jewelry boxes as a kid I might have bought at the flea market, but that's really about it. I had no disrespect for the wood, but had no real appreciation for it until today. After it was oiled and waxed, this just looks incredible. My little killer whale don't look too shabby, I think. I can't tell which side he looks better on, but he's there anyway. So as I had mentioned, sealing the pores inside of this guy was going to make a change, and putting that oil and wax on it, just, oh my gosh. Beautiful sounding flute. So very pleased with it. Not too bad for having made the inside of it with a Dremel. I'd say I probably could have done a little bit better with my tools and machines that I have today. It would have changed a little of this and a little of that, and it would have been great. But look, for a beginner to use something like that, like a Dremel or what have you, to make a flute, if yours turned out this good, I would suggest being happy with it. I've been doing this for 38 years of my life, and in that time I have advanced from one machine to the next until eventually, we have a lot of stuff going on today. But this was a nice revisit of an old system that I used to use, and it reminded me certainly where I come from and how I started, and I hope that you all have enjoyed hearing some of my stories about that as well, because there are some of those pieces of that puzzle that you just couldn't imagine anybody would ever use a washing machine motor as a belt sander or disc sander. But anyway, very pleased with it. I hope you all have enjoyed this video. Keep in mind, I do have hundreds of videos on making and playing Native American flutes, with so many more on the way. We've got list after list after list of video, and it's just a matter of keeping up with those, as well as everything else going on in a business such as making Native American flutes for a living. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Like I say, if you haven't, this will be one of the first or second times I've ever asked you to like and subscribe and share what we do, but I hear that helps a lot of people out. So may even help some other people out that were interested in learning how to make a flute with a Dremel or a drone. And keep in mind, I do have more elaborate drone making videos and countless flute making videos. So once again, my name is Charlie Mato-Toyela from Blue Bear Flutes, and our website is bluebearflutes.com. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok under the same, and we hope to see you here again on YouTube very soon.